안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 오늘은 1월 17일인가요? 16일인가요? 토요일, 아무튼 토요일이에요. 햇살이 아주 좋습니다. 아침 9시에요, 지금. 음, 어제 야간 끝나고 잠을 자고, 원래 일찍 일어나야 되는데 너무 늦게 자서 새벽 2시에 잠을 잤어요, 다시. 근데 5시에 일어나서 3시간만 잤습니다. 그래서 7시에까지 뒹굴뒹굴 대다가 일어나서 아침 먹고 지금 이제 뭐 세탁기 돌리고 정리할 거 정리하고 스트레칭을 좀 했어요. 오늘은 팔굽혀펴기랑 복근 운동 위주로 할 겁니다. 그리고 오늘 사회적 거리두기 또 발표가 있죠. 그렇습니다. 내일은 또 눈이 온다던데 내일 출근해야 되는데 일단 운동하겠습니다. 스트레칭을 했으니까 팔굽혀펴기 바로 들어가고 복근 운동도 하겠습니다. 역시 운동할 땐 CNN이죠.
Problem and one of the homes for survivors of trafficking is basically saying, look, we just feel completely alone in the world. So we came up with a concept called You Are Not Alone. And we started Zoom calls. And what we do is not only would people from Orphan Starfish and the girls get on the calls, but we have a celebrity, an artist, a musician, somebody come on and sing to them or perform for them. The beauty of them kind of knowing that the world still cares about them and there's actually celebrities they've seen on TV that care about them was something that was quite uplifting.
I'm Will Ripley in Tokyo, Japan, and this is CNN.
Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, who challenged the election results, is issuing a letter apologizing to his black constituents. Lankford writing in the letter, quote, "My action of asking for more election information caused a firestorm of suspicion among many of my friends, particularly in black communities around the state. I was completely blindsided, but I also found a blind spot. What I did not realize was all of the national conversation about states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan was seen as casting doubt on the validity of votes coming out of predominantly black communities like Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Detroit. I should have recognized how what I said and what I did could be interpreted by many of you. I deeply regret my blindness to that perception, and for that, I am sorry." He didn't realize what he was doing. I mean, it's hard to imagine that. I mean, how could that be? Because, I mean, it wasn't a secret, right? USA Today, Trump election lawsuits targeted areas with large black Latino populations. NAACP sues Trump, GOP over alleged disenfranchisement of black voters. Washington Post, Trump is trying to disenfranchise black voters. The GOP isn't stopping him. But okay, maybe Lankford missed these and many other headlines about Trump's efforts to overturn the election and missed that all the lawsuits were indeed focused on those communities. But surely a senator would not sign on to challenging a presidential election before he knew what he was objecting to, right? I mean, after all, Lankford last year said, quote, "We've come a long way on the issue of race in America, but we clearly have a long way to go." He actually sits on the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission, one of the most deadly race massacres in this country. A white mob terrorized black residents' homes and businesses. Historians now believe it could have left up to 300 people dead. He's on that commission. But Lankford says that he did not know. And instead, he repeatedly went on TV and helped President Trump and his allies try to undermine the election.
I mean, everything from Sharpies on ballots in Arizona to suitcases of ballots under tables in Georgia to laws that were changed to individuals that were dead or that moved or from out of state that voted. All those things demand us to be able to take a look at. It is very difficult to be able to police absentee ballots. Once a ballot leaves out there and trying to be able to manage, is this the person that actually voted? There were some people that voted that registered and voted that were dead. They had people that were gathering up ballots from homeless people and just saying, "I'm going to fill it out for you."
Of course, remember in Georgia, the president said 5,000 dead people voted and it was 2, right? So there's just a lot of fact checking that didn't happen here, apparently by the senator. The question, though, is did he know what he was objecting to? when he made a speech on the Senate floor challenging the results of the elections, just actually as the Senate was evacuated when the pro-Trump mob attacked.
We have proposed a constitutional solution. Pause the count. Get more facts to the states before January the 20th. My challenge today is not about the good people of Arizona.
And it will stand in recess until the call of the chair.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
One thing worth noting, Langford did withdraw his challenge when the Senate returned that night, saying that Congress needed to come together. But he did that, right, because of the riot, and maybe that awakened him to the reality of what he was doing. But we should be clear here. He is not saying he is sorry now for challenging the election. He is saying that he is sorry about how the decision to challenge the election was perceived. Out front now, Derek Johnson. He is the president of the NAACP. First, what's your reaction to Senator Langford, who has spoken out about race relations, who is on that commission, saying that he was not aware of this issue?
Well, is he prepared now to vote to convict the president with this impeachment proceeding now that he recognized the president and others misled him? Is he prepared to make amends to the residents of African descent in Oklahoma with a bill to address the race riot in Tulsa? I think what was clear here is the fact that individuals committed treason, a failed coup d'etat. He was a part of it with the messaging that he put out there to constituents and others, and now he's trying to make amends for his actions. The only way he can make amends, in our opinion, is he stand up in this moment and convict the president with this impeachment process. The toxic culture that has been created by actions from individuals like him and others is something that's going to cause African Americans in this nation to deal with for years to come.
So President Johnson, let me reread a little bit of what Langford says in his letter. He says, I should have recognized how what I said and what I did could be interpreted by many of you. I deeply regret my blindness to that perception, and for that I am sorry. So obviously he's not apologizing for his election challenge, only how it was perceived. What do you make of that? And what do you make of that, again, if someone's going to stand up and challenge the election and not realize that all these lawsuits were indeed targeted very specifically at these black communities in Atlanta, Detroit, and Philadelphia?
For United States senators to say he wasn't aware before he took such an aggressive posture, it's unfortunate for the citizens that he represents. Is it something he always approached his vote and his floor debate uninformed? No, that's like saying, I didn't realize I kicked you with my left foot. I really meant to kick you with my right foot. I'm sorry you perceived it was the wrong foot. It's still a kick. We have a problem with politicians such as him that use dog whistle politics. But in this case, the loud siren of racism, the loud siren of white supremacy as a mechanism to try to drive an agenda that's not consistent with our democracy.
So he does ask for a second chance, right? He continues in the letter. He says, I am asking my friends in North Tulsa for grace and an opportunity for us to show the state what reconciliation looks like in moments of disagreement. So does this really, to you, in terms of his genuine meaning of this, come down to his vote on convicting the president?
지금 3번 했어요. 3세트.
In the backdrop of a failed coup to undermine our democracy falls short. What is he going to do?
구름이 많이 꼈네요. 눈이 오긴 올 건가 봐요, 내일.
What is he going to do?
제발 일기예보가
person who's
틀렸으면
in the White
좋겠습니다.
House, who have created some of the most negative atmosphere we've seen since the Civil War. Now, what are you going to do since you was a party to this? Are you going to vote to convict the president? Are you going to take a course of action through your legislative responsibilities to build our democracy? Are you going to leave a party that have obviously left the notion that they should serve and protect from both foreign and domestic? What are you going to do? Not what are you going to say?
All right, President Johnson, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I hope Senator Langford will come on and talk about this and his plans and his thoughts. We invited him tonight and he declined. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us. Anderson starts now.
Good evening. As the president makes plans for his military send-off next week, the capital he's preparing to flee is witnessing the kind of military presence once seen only in places like Baghdad and Kabul, which is not something to just take note of and move on from. It has not been this way since the Civil War, and it's growing. The Pentagon late today upping the contingent for next week's inauguration from 21 to 25,000 National Guard members. And just as the threat picture for that took shape, there's breaking news about a police intelligence report that predicted something like what we saw last week, 3 days before the assault took place. That and other new details about last week's attack. They make it clear, in case a reminder is needed, that this could easily have been far deadlier than it was. There's new reporting in the Washington Post about how close the insurrectionists, some of whom are shouting "Hang Mike Pence" and "Lynch Pence," may have come to actually crossing paths with the vice president, his wife, and daughter. According to the Post timeline, this mob being lured away bravely from the Senate chamber door by Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman came up the stairs at 2:14 p.m. According to C-SPAN footage and a Post reporter on the scene, that is just a minute after the vice president was moved from the room into a nearby office. Had the attackers arrived just that one brief minute sooner, they might have spotted Pence, and who knows what might have happened then. Just 10 minutes later, by the way, with the vice president and his family in hiding, protected by Secret Service, the president tweeted, and I quote, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution." He didn't tweet, "Gosh, I hope the vice president's okay. Please everyone leave the Capitol." He didn't tweet, "There was no fraud. Joe Biden won the election. We'll get him next time in the ballot box." No. The mob, which nearly caught sight of the man they came to hang, still had these words from the president ringing in their ears.
When you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos and the stupid people that he's listening to. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Well, those were dirty numbers. They were based on a lie. People died because of that lie. And even now, with the blood of police officers on his hands, with thousands of troops in the nation's capital, with authorities in all 50 states on alert for violence, this twice impeached president has not yet repudiated that lie. He doesn't care, or he just wants to burn it all down on his way out the door, or maybe both. He could tamp all of this down, but he won't. Of course he won't. He'll keep lying and saying the election was stolen, just like he and his allies have been saying, which is right on cue, parroted by some of his supporters bent on violence.
Make no
얼마나
mistake,
했죠?
this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country.
It's
13분 싫어하냐, 씨.
unquestionable that our votes were stolen. It's unquestionable.
The Republican poll watchers were ejected, in some cases physically, from the room under the false pretense of a pipe burst.
People were pushed out of the voting areas, told that pipes had broken.
Election officials pulled boxes, Democrats, and suitcases of ballots out from under a table.
Ballots were made up out of nothing. They appeared from under tables and suitcases.
Well, you all saw it on television. Totally fraudulent.
They don't get to tell us we didn't see what we saw.
They changed the rules. They changed the election law, and they did it in an unconstitutional fashion.
They changed the rules mid-game, and they're not being held accountable, and that's a shame.
President Trump won this election.
We watched our American election get stolen from us.
Everyone who's listening, do not be quiet. Do not be silent about this. We cannot allow this to happen before our very eyes.
We have to, as American patriots, we have to do what we can to take back this country.
Republicans will not back down. We will not wait to 4 years from now to change this. We are going to fight this now.
We were normal, good, law-abiding citizens, and you guys did this to us. We want our country back.
From the president's lips to his enablers to the would-be lynch mob, all of it a lie.
앵커 표정이 되게 안 좋아요 지금.
Yesterday,
아, 힘들어.
Oklahoma sent a letter to his black constituents saying in part, What I did not realize was all of the national conversation about states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan was seen as casting doubt on the validity of votes coming out of predominantly black communities like Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Detroit. He said he was blindsided by the reaction, but also found a blind spot within himself. He expressed regret in this letter, not, we should point out, for casting doubt on the outcome of the election, attempting to overturn those votes, but for what he called his blindness to how his words and actions could be interpreted by black residents of Oklahoma. Now, whatever you might think of Senator Lankford's apology, such as it is, it certainly far eclipses anything we have seen or heard from the president. For more now on the pomp and circumstance that the president wants to move on with, among other items, we're joined now by CNN Chief White House Correspondent Jim Acosta and CNN Chief Political Correspondent Dana Bash. Jim, so President Trump wants a big military send-off, which is, perhaps not surprising. I mean, is it just to take the sting out of being impeached a second time?
Anderson, I think it's just another dear leader moment for the president before he leaves office as this sorry, shameful chapter in American history comes to a miserable end next Wednesday. We are told by officials who are familiar with the planning of all of this that the president wants a ceremony, a grand departure ceremony that is similar to the kind of ceremonies you see when there's a departing head of state, complete with a 21-gun salute, a red carpet, a military band, and a color guard. And people at home might be wondering, Anderson, well, how can the president get something like this? Until noon on Wednesday, the 20th, Inauguration Day, he's still the commander-in-chief. And so he can order all of this, tell his staffers to set all of this up, and American tax dollars will pay for it.
So is this to happen before the inauguration? Does he want it to have it be in the middle of the inauguration as kind of counter-programming?
It is supposed to happen on the morning of the 20th before Joe Biden takes the oath of office. And Anderson, it is a sad commentary on the Trump presidency. I was here on January 20th, 4 years ago, when the Obamas met the Trumps, greeted the Trumps in the North Portico, this North Portico entrance behind me, as Donald Trump was preparing to take the oath of office. And the Obamas showed that kind of grace and class, even though Trump had questioned the legitimacy of Barack Obama when he was president of the United States. President Trump is not going to afford the same courtesy to the Bidens. He is going to continue with this fantasy and this fraud that the election was stolen from him, and he is going to leave this city in that kind of fashion in an event that is essentially a fraud.
Yeah, I mean, these are small people that, they pretend this president pretends he's a big man, a strong man. He's too scared and, he's not strong enough to go to the actual inauguration. I mean, Dana, I get him wanting to try to take away from President-elect Biden's inauguration. He's petty like that. It makes sense, but it sure feels tone deaf. I mean, he wants this big military send-off. He's already got one because there's more than 21,000 National Guard troops in D.C. right now. The city is on lockdown because of him, and people are dying of COVID at record numbers, and the vaccine rollout is nowhere near where it needs to be. And this is what this guy is spending his final days planning and dreaming about?
Yes, this is Donald Trump. It is the way he has been, and he has become a caricature of himself, which is kind of hard to imagine given what we have seen over the past 4 years. But Anderson, you took the words out of my mouth, and we see the images right now. The president wants to have an image and some kind of theatrics that people will remember. This is what they're going to remember. They're going to remember people like Jim and me and everybody else who works in this city having to go through checkpoint after checkpoint, like you would, Anderson, when you are going to war zones across the globe. But this is in the United States of America, and for one reason, and one reason only, and that is because voters in a free and fair democracy defeated Donald Trump, and he can't admit it. And he is still clinging to this lie because he was told since he was younger that you cannot be a loser. And so he is coming up with and hanging his hat. This is according to somebody who knows him well. This isn't even just me saying this. Hanging his hat on any crazy conspiracy theory that he can find in order to not admit the reality that he was defeated. Those are the images.
지금 팔굽혀펴기
That is
20개랑
the
복근
circumstance without the
운동,
pomp.
레그레이즈랑 성복근 운동을 20개씩 총 4세트 했어요.
As he leaves office.
마지막
And Jim,
아까
I understand
80%에서
Caroline
말았는데
has
그건 다시
now
리셋하고
flown the coop. She's
마지막
gone, I
한
guess, off to
세트
Florida and is not coming back.
만
Who
하고
is visiting the White House
오전
these days?
운동은
I
여기서
understand there was
끝내겠습니다.
somebody who visited today.
오후에도
Yeah.
똑같이
The
팔굽혀펴기랑
Star Wars bar of characters
스쿼트를
continues to file
하고
in.
저녁에는 턱걸이를 할
We saw
겁니다.
Mike Lindell, the founder of MyPillow, which is a pillow
마지막
manufacturer.
세트
I'm sure you've
가겠습니다.
heard of it. Maybe perhaps you've talked about Mike Lindell on your show. He has been espousing the same silly conspiracy theories about the election that the president has. He met with the president for about 5 minutes. I confirmed this with Mike Lindell on the phone earlier this evening. He said that he brought some documents in for the president to see, that claiming to be evidence of election fraud in the 2020 election. And he says that President Trump took that material and gave it to some of his staffers. The other thing we should point out is that Mike Lindell said that, you know, at no point in any of these documents do the words martial law appear. Anderson, if you look at a close-up of these documents right now, the words martial law do appear. It's one of the strange, you know, fringe, you know, type of things that are said in these documents. And Anderson, it is just another example of how the president, despite everything that happened on January 6th, the fact that people died because of these lies spewed by the president, he is still welcoming people to the White House who are reinforcing these crazy ideas about the election. And I hate to say it, Mike Lindell is one of those people. And when I was talking on the phone earlier this evening, he just wasn't making a lot of sense. Just like everything else that's happening with Donald Trump these days.
Jim Acosta, Dan Bash, thanks very much. More on the breaking news just up on the Washington Post website. The headline, Capitol Police Intelligence Report warned 3 days before attack that Congress itself could be targeted. The Post, Carol Lenig writing that the authors of this intelligence report, quote, warned of a violent scenario in which Congress itself could be the target of angry supporters of President Trump, and how thousands of enraged protesters egged on by Trump and flanked by white supremacists and extreme militia groups were likely to stream into Washington armed for battle, end quote. With that on the table, CNN Shimon Prokupecz joins us now. I mean, Shimon, this reporting is frankly stunning. The fact that it was a Capitol Police intelligence report indicating this, given what we now know about the preparation or the lack of preparation, preparations on the Capitol. Clearly, authorities want to avoid any repeat of what happened last week. What are the latest security measures we're seeing in Washington tonight?
Yeah, Anderson, and keeping on that theme